Hello, welcome. This will be a review of the Adept Cosmetics Seahorse Eyeshadow and Multichrome Pigment Palette. Adept kindly sent this to me without any obligation to do a video or review. I actually, when they reached out and asked if I was interested in receiving their new eyeshadow palette, first I saw the message, read it, closed it, paused, read it again, just to make sure. They're asking me. They're asking little old me. But I even checked the account, the name of the account, if there was a typo, just to make sure the right Adept account that I follow are the ones reaching out to me to ask if they can send this to me. I replied and said yes. At the time I didn't know what the palette, the theme was. All I knew was it was a new eyeshadow palette they're releasing. So I did say yes. So thank you so much to Adept Cosmetics for thinking of me and for sending this to me. So I received it, and then I got a shipping notification. During that shipping notification was the first time I saw that it was $140 on it. My jaw dropped. I'll get back to the price later, but I saw that, and then a few times when I was looking at the tracking, I then saw the photo of the palette, and mine is beat up a lot because I've been using it and swatching the shadows, but I will insert what the palette looked like before I even touched it, and what the packaging, the outer packaging. I love the gradient, looking like a sunset. It's beautiful, and I love the seahorse kind of medallion here. Of course, Adept usually on the packaging writes if it's a pigment palette, an eyeshadow with the grams, it's cruelty free and vegan, just a little detail about the palette. So what I did was cut that sleeve that was wrapped around the palette out and taped it to the back, so I know. So I'm going to insert pictures and of this palette, what it looked like when I initially got it, and also the photo of the shadows. You just saw the shadows untouched in their pristine state. This is what the palette looks like right now. I've been using it a lot, but this is what it looks like. It is beautiful. It is beautiful. So with this being my first official review, my attempt to do a review, my plan is to provide information that I would like to know as a consumer if I was watching a review of this palette. So I'll do my best. So this is the shadows. My first thought when I opened it was a lot of these look similar. That was my first thought. And then I thought, because they look so similar, some of them, like these two, and a lot up here, I thought my mind kept going back to that $140. But that was my initial thought without touching or swatching any of the shades. I just thought some of these look similar. Then I started swatching, which I'll swatch the shades for you, and then I have a slow motion clip showing you guys the shades swatched, so you can see. Hopefully I captured the shift of the shadows. First, these look more beautiful in person than what I've seen online with some of the shades. This one is Courtship, Big Belly, Tiger Tail, Giraffe, and I'm not sure if you can see some of the texture. Does the Courtship and Giraffe look more textured than Big Belly and Tiger Tail? Those look smoother. And as you can see, just looking onward, at least from what I can see, they look similar. But I don't think I can capture the shifts the way it is right now with my camera. Yeah, I don't think I can. But those four, just looking onward to the naked eye, it's similar. They're similar. Low Crown, Jayaka's, Pygmy Torny, Tyro, and these are the two I thought when I opened it initially. They look similar. And they do in the swatches. False Eye. When I was researching seahorses, I didn't know this, but I learned that although they have two eyes, one is to look out for predators, and one, they move independently of each other. So one to look out for predators and one eye to look for food. But this is False Eye. Narrowed Belly. Narrowed Belly is the puttiest. It is mushy. It's putty-like. The squishiest of them all. In a way, maybe wet, but it's the puttiest. If I push down, you can see there's a big indentation, and it looks most pigmented, and I think it's because of the texture of the shade. But that's Narrowed Belly. Long Snout, Paradoxical, let's see, Sindo, Ponto, Contour is the flakiest of them all, and soft coral. So you can kind of see the soft coral. You can kind of see the shift in soft coral. With the swatches that you're going to see, some of the shifts I did not pick up I did not see while recording that swatch footage till I watched it and rewatched it and picked up some of the shifts while I was moving it slowly. And I looked at some of the shades multiple times at different passing, just to see if I pick up some shades. Like the shade Soft Coral, that one I was most fascinated with. It had like an indigo, blue, green, gold, and then at the end of my arm, when I was looking at it, you can see that pink shift to it, pink berry shift to it. So I was fascinated with that shade Soft Coral. Also with the swatches, the arm swatches that you will see the video, I did go over each shade twice, so 2 swatches each. The shade Narrowed Belly, I didn't need to go over it twice, but I did just for the consistency of the whole swatch. if you do have any questions, please do ask in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't have an answer, I'll let you know I don't have an answer, or that I haven't tried whatever question or suggestions that you have. I'll just let you know if I don't have an answer, but I'll do my best to answer. When I initially swatched this palette, when I got it, on first swipe for each shade, I just thought, these are all topper-like shades. They're light, airy, topper-like shades, and my mind kept going back with those initial feelings of it being topper-like. My mind kept going back to $140. So there's the palette. I did this look with this palette, and I'll insert a clip of me creating this look sometime during this video. But with my notes, let's see. So this palette is releasing on Friday. According to Adept Cosmetics Instagram, Friday, May 26th, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, which is 6 a.m. Hawaiian Time, 8 a.m. Alaskan, 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central, and 12 p.m. Eastern Time. I got this palette I got this palette right before I went out of town, so I didn't get a chance to play with it. And then when I came back into town, when I came back home, that's when I got a chance to play with it. So it's been over a week that I've been playing with it, 10-11 days. And I know they did an early release for 24 hours, and but my goal is to put up this review before the official release date of Friday, the 26th of May. So during that early access of 24 hours where some consumers could purchase them, they offered free shipping to US, Canada, Mexico, UK, and EU. And this also applies for May 26th, May 27th, and the 28th, according to Adept Cosmetics Instagram page. And there are no codes required for you to get that free shipping during those periods. I do believe this palette, although $140, you can use a discount code to get some money off the initial price. There's so many discount codes of content creators that you can use to get some discount. I will put some up here on my screen that I remember and I usually use when I do purchase from Adept Cosmetics. And then a little bit about the palette. They did mention on their site that it includes 14 precious gems, iridescent multichromes with translucent base, and one semi-precious gem, duochrome with translucent base. I can't tell you which one is which. I honestly cannot tell you which one is the duochrome. And out of all the 15 shadows, I know they're all shifty. They all shift more than one shade. Some I can easily pick out that they have more than one shifts in it, and some I have to really look closely and analyze and shift them, move them around different lights for me to actually see if they shift more than 2 shades. I'm not great at that yet. This is also a magnetic palette, so the pens are removable. So I have this magnet here, and that's what it means. So you can move these shades around, customize it as you please. And if you have other Adept palette, you can customize the shades as well, which I have done with my other palettes. There's a mirror right here. I love that it says do not disturb on the mirror here. Let's see what else on my notes. I recommend application with dense, stiff brush or with fingers. I use fingers most of the time with not just my Adept shadows, but most of my eyeshadows. Something else they note is requires a good primer to prevent fallout and creasing. I use the NYX glitter primer, and also I've used the Pat McGrath Artistry wand to whenever I've worn these. I still got some fallout, but not as much as I would if I did not use any of those grapey primers. When I started testing out these shadows, I started off wearing each shade on its own just to give it its time to shine, and also I can analyze that shade on its own without it competing with another shade on my on one eyelid if I applied 3 or 2 shades. I did that at first. I did with some of the looks, I did apply the shade, one shade as the lid shade, and then perhaps another shade as the inner corner highlight. Even though while testing it, the inner corner application doesn't tell me much except for the shift sometimes about the shadow. I learned more about the shadow when it was on my lid, where creasing happens, when I can see there's more surface space for me to see how the shadow performs and how it shifts. But for me personally, the inner corner didn't tell me much about the performance because there's it's in a smaller space. It seemed to stay put and there's no movement like the mobile lid on the inner corner. The multichrome pigments are not safe for the eye area for eye use in the USA, but they are deemed safe to use in the EU. And they did write out which multichrome pigments. So tiger tail, giraffe, low crown, tyro, narrowed belly, long snout, punto, and soft coral are all not eye safe according to the US standards, which means 8 out of the 15-pan palette are not deemed eye safe to be used in the eye area in the USA. So that's something to consider when you're thinking I'm spending $140, especially if you're sensitive to some pigments or certain ingredients in eyeshadows. That's 8 eyeshadows that you cannot use, leaving 7 shadows that you can use. So 7 shadows you can use. Is that worth $140 for you? It's up to you to determine that, but just something to keep in mind. With each shade, I wrote down what they feel like to me. So, example, some shades when I touched them felt like the same formula that that is in Anhydrine. 6 shades that give me this, when I touched them to swatch, reminded me of some of the shadows in Anhydrine, where they're not putty, they're on the drier side but creamy when you do touch them to swatch them. Only shadow in here that is putty, it's mushy, when you press on it there's some indentation, is Narrowed Belly. narrowed belly creased on me no matter what primer I used. I have oily lids, I have hooded lids, so when I'm looking onward, my lid disappears. So whatever is hidden, shadows and oil collects there, and that separates my shadows and also breaks down my shadows, affects the wear of my shadows. But when I'm looking at you raised eyebrow like this, you can see my whole lid, but you can still see the line of my crease. But onward, it's hooded and hidden. And that is why when I apply my shadows, I always bring it up so that when my eyes are open, you can still see the eyeshadow, the colors that I'm wearing. So narrowed belly is the puttiest and can be deceiving because it's really pigmented. It's the most pigmented, opaque, I guess, the most opaque on initial swatch, and it's beautiful. It's right here. It's beautiful, but on my eyelid it creases within minutes of putting it on. I will insert a look that I did. The first look I ever did when I got this palette, I was attracted to narrowed belly, the green. I put it on. Now, I've worn it 3 times, and each time I tried it with different primers, and it still creased. The first time I tried it with the Makeup by Mario Eye Prep and Set, and at first I thought, I used something creamy and sticky, and then I'm applying something putty. Maybe that's the reason. And then I used my usual CoverGirl primer and put it on. It still creased. And then I used my newly found love, the Hindash Color Fluid. I used one of them that was close to my skin tone as a primer. I've been using it as a primer for just my eye looks in general, and it creased as well. I will insert a look where I used narrowed belly. I will also insert another look where I wasn't going anywhere that day, so I wore one shade. I think it was long snout. I'll label each clip I show. I'll try and label what shadows I'm wearing, but long snout, I wore it on one eye, and then I wore narrowed belly again, the same primer, everything, and you can see the difference, the performance on my lids. I think it's just the nature of this shadow, the formula. That is why, also in combination with my oily lids, I do think that is why it creased on my lids. Narrowed belly, beautiful color, but it's my least favorite shade out of this whole palette. I can do without it. I don't like it. I'm probably not gonna wear it on my mobile lid. Maybe as an inner corner shade I would, which I did one of the times I was trying out this palette, and it looks beautiful. But for my mobile lid, this is not a shade for me. I don't want to be wasteful, so this narrowed belly, I see it being used in an avant-garde look, so I can use it up and not waste it. Perhaps on my neck or a face highlight. Ooh, I didn't try it as a face highlight. Let me just use my finger. As a face highlight, it's green. If you're into green highlighter, it would work. yes, I can see me using it as a face highlight. There it is. And looking onward, you don't really see a cast of a different shade with the you don't see a cast of a different shade. It's only when I turn and it catches the light that you may see it. It's beautiful. Oh, I can use it as a face highlighter. But yes, narrowed belly, least favorite. I don't care for it for my mobile eyelids. Inner corner and now face highlighter, yes, I'm okay with it. This shade Soft Coral reminded me of Cleona Bloodline. When I saw it initially, I did swatch it. They're similar, they're not exact. I wrote that Soft Coral, the one that reminded me of Cleona Bloodline, which is a vibrant multi-chrome. Cleona Bloodline has more of the purple burgundy berry base to it, and the Soft Coral has more of the shifts, the topper shifts on top of the gold, green, turquoise, blue, purple to it. So Bloodline has more of that richer base, and Soft Coral has more of the shifty parts on top. The shades that are stand out as light topper-like shades were Pygmy, Thorny, False Eye, and Paradoxical. Cindo also, but it's maybe next level in texture. It's not too light. It has some substance to it, but it still feels topper-like. So topper-like, Pygmy, Thorny, False Eye, Paradoxical, and Cindo. Tiger Tail, this one, Low Crown, and Jayakas. So those feel like the typical old formula they had, where it's a typical shimmer shadow that's dry and smooth. Courtship, Giraffe, and Punto feels flaky when you swatch them and upon picking up, but when you apply them, they apply smoother than they feel on the pan. And something that I learned from Millie, Bad to the Brow, that I utilized when I was applying some of these was the flaky shades. She did advise, not with this palette, just from watching her in the past with her content and recommendations with applying flaky shades and multi-chrome, but particularly flaky shades. She did say you swatch them and try and scrape the corner of the pan at first when you pick up the shadows, then apply it that way to be able to get that smoothness if it's too flaky for you. So what I did was, when I was applying Punto, I did a lot of that. I pick it up, scrape it a bit, and then apply, and then I slowly built it up that way. Next is a clip of how I created this eye look. I had a few fallouts, so I just leaned into it and just applied some of giraffe right here on my skin, so that, I don't know if you can see, so that you can kind of, yeah, you can see it now. I just leaned into the fallout and was like, let me just apply some even lower instead of just right here on my lower lash line. And I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I kept coming back to the price, $140. So I went and looked at other brands that do have multichromes, like Davina, Cleona, Terra Moon. Those are the ones I went and looked at. I also own shadows from those brands, Terra Moon, Cleona, Davina, and Adept as well. I just compared the prices. I broke down this palette. There are 15 shadows, $140 without using the discount code, the original price. When I broke it down, each shadow is $9.30. And that's before you even apply the discount, just to keep that in mind. But I did not apply the discount when I was calculating. I just went with $140 divided by 15, $9.30. And when I calculated that and looked at other brands, I was like, oh, it's close to the same or even cheaper than the other brands that I have looked at. And then I looked at Cleona. The Adept pans are approximately 2 grams. I'm saying this now, but I really don't look at sizes most of the time when I'm looking at comparing prices. It's just, I guess, could be a flaw of mine. I just think, at least when I'm looking at prices of eyeshadows, like individual pans, I usually look at the formula or if they're similar, things like that. But in case you're interested, Adeptcosmetics, these ones are approximately 2 grams a pan. The Cleona, the Terra Moon, and Davina, the sizes vary. Most are the 1.5-ish to 2 grams. So when I looked at Cleona, their multichrome is between $7 and $15 something. It just depends on the amount of pigments or the nature of each multichrome. For Terra Moon and Davina, they use the 26 mm pans. Terra Moons, most of the multichromes that I saw were about $17.50, and Davina was between $14 to $17. Davina has highlighters that are multichrome, but those are cheaper. Again, I think it's just the nature of the pigments used in each of the products for the price. So just to give you an idea of what, if you're analyzing the big old $140, when you break it down, it is on par and perhaps even cheaper than some other multichromes from different indie brands. With that said, as a consumer, I think the initial out of the door $140 to me is too much. It's still like $140, even though I have purchased from Cleona and Davina and Terra Moon 15 shadows and paid more for all of them together. I think the idea for me is just my mindset. The fact that I'm picking the shadows I want individually and then it totals more than $140. I'm not thinking much about it compared to here's a palette, it's $140. I don't know why that grips me more than if I were to go purchase individual shadows that I think I'm interested in, because I really don't know till I get it in person if it's a shadow that I want. Because I shop by looking at other contents and swatches to determine if a shadow is what I'm interested in. So that is it with the price. I wrote down some cons and pros. Pros, the price per shadow, if you want to think of it that way. I like that the palette is magnetized, the shadows are magnetized, so you can remove them and customize them the way you prefer. Also, I have smaller magnetic empty palettes, and if you're into building your own for traveling, I can see myself removing 1 or 2 shadows that I want and just put it in those and travel with it. Something to think about. Another pro is the variety of textures in the palette and the shifts. There's some smooth, the usual shimmer eyeshadow fills with that texture. There's the putty one, and then there's the super flaky ones if that's what you want. Another pro, beautiful packaging. The presentation, if this is what you're into, this is beautiful. I did not purchase the Arrow inspired palette because I thought, from the videos I've watched on it, I just thought, oh, this looks too big for what I think I'm into. I prefer smaller palettes. And when I got this palette, I was actually surprised. I was like, oh, there's 15 shadows, yes, but this feels smaller than I thought. And I appreciated that it fits with my other palettes and my beauty caps, so how I store them. My other pro is the palette size. For me personally, that's a pro for me. I also mentioned the packaging. If you're a collector, I can see you picking this up because it's a unique packaging. The gradient and the seahorse, just beautiful. The palette feels like the Ninhydrin, their other palettes feel. That faux vegan leather-like feel, and it's beautiful. The cons that I wrote, the price. Back to the price. Another con, similar shifts. I had some shades that were so similar to the naked eye when I was looking at it that I actually wore them out of the house, and no one called me out and said, oh, you're wearing 2 different shadows. I actually didn't, looking at myself once in a while when I catch the mirror, I wasn't like, oh, these are 2 different shadows. It was more of, I know they're 2 different shadows, but I don't see a distinct difference to warrant having both, or more than. There were a few that I did that too, that I wore that way, that warranted having those similar in the same palette. So that was one of the cons, having similar shifts. A con, variety of textures. I said that from a place of, some consumers might want, I just want to get a palette and know these are the textures I'm getting. Either all flaky, all shimmer smooth, but I can see how you're in love with a shade. It's a certain texture, and then you go into a different shade and it's like catches you off guard. Totally different texture, performs differently. That's where my mind is going with the difference in texture. That is also can be a pro, because it's one of my pro that I mentioned earlier, the different textures. Another con that I see that some may think of, it's not a con for me, especially since it's magnetized, I can shift stuff around. But another con is it being all shimmer, shiny, no mattes palette, which means some might say it's a companion palette. You need, if you're interested in using mattes in your eye look, you will need to get another palette. Let's say this is magnetized, not magnetized. Let's say these are permanent in here. You cannot move it around, shift it, customize it. You will need to take with you some kind of matte, either your bronzer or other matte shadows, to play with this if that's what you usually do for your eye looks. And that is why I added that as a con. This, because it's magnetized, I can put my other mattes, Adept Cosmetics mattes, like from the Amunet palette in here. Viseart palettes, the shadows can also fit in here. The smaller ones can fit in here. I have done that before with my other Adept palettes. So it's something to consider as well. I feel like this review is a bit scattered, so if you're still here, thank you. Some of the shades that I wore together and just wore out of the house, and I did not get any comments of their different shadows, and I didn't even notice it, even though I know I was wearing two different shadows. There was also a photo I posted on Instagram when I was trying out this palette where I wore two different shadows from this palette, and it looks the same on the photo. Something to keep in mind. So the shadows I wore together at a time, I wore Courtship and Big Belly. So with these two, what I noticed, they were similar. I just noticed that Courtship was sparklier. It's the same, it gave me the same shift on my eyelids. But the Courtship shade, this one is sparklier, had more twinkle to it. I also noticed the shifts in the shadow might not pick up as much as when I do swatch in a linear fashion, where you can see, you have more space to see the shifts. So that may have also affected how it played on my lids. Big Belly, the feel, it's a shimmer, satin smooth shadow, the kind of shadows I always go for. So I can see myself applying Big Belly and then topping it with Courtship for that extra oomph, the sparkle on the lids. So these are the two I wore one of the days I was getting ready to go out. The other pair that I wore were these two. I wore Giraffe and Low Crown, and these are exactly the same as how I feel with these. Shifts similar on my lids, but Giraffe had that twinkle, that sparkle, that oomph with the eye look. And I kept a few times throughout the day when I'm looking at myself just to assess creasing, how things still looks. My eyes kept being attracted to the ones with the sparkles, the extra thin on top, which was Courtship and Giraffe. So I wore these two together and these two together. I wore these. The shifts in these they're not significant. What did I write? Jayaka's was more, the shift was much more purple in it. I wrote more purple and it's top-alike, and then Pygmy Thorny, the shift was much more blue. So Pygmy Thorny was much blue with the shifts, and Jayaka's was more purple in its shifts, but it was not significant enough for me to notice an immediate difference whenever I looked on with my eye looks. Now the shifts though, Pygmy Thorny, the blue shift in it, when I looked close at my eye looks on that day that I wore them, I saw the blue much more. It twinkled out much more, the sparkle of the blue. I noticed it more with a closer look, but just the normal looking, they look the same. Look like they're different, but they translated the same on my lids. They translated the same on my eyelids, and I wore the pair out. I did not pair it anything, so one shade on one eye and one shade on the other eyelid, and I was surprised how similar they looked on my eyelids. I wore those, no one called me out, and I just know that they were two different shades, but looking at them in person, I was like, these can pass for the same color. There are 3 shades in here that I consider flaky: Courtship, Giraffe, and Punto. Punto is the flakiest where I really don't prefer flaky shadows, and that's one of the reasons when I look at reviews, I shy away from them. I do own some, but they're not my most reached shadow. I have to be seeking that shade, that texture for me to reach for them. That is also why this was the last shade I tried out of this whole palette. So Punto is the flakiest. Giraffe is the next on the flaky level. And Courtship is the least flaky. So all three are flaky, but this is the least and this is the most from my testing. Also, the reason why it's the last one I tried is it's pink. Pink is not a shade that I'm popping fast to go try, but it must be tried. But here's the thing, I was pleasantly surprised by how beautiful the shade looked on my eyelids. That memory will be what will draw me into keep using it, but it's not going to be my go-to whenever I open this palette. I have to be in a certain mood to reach for it, but it's beautiful. The shift, this is beautiful. I think when I tested it, I wore this and Tiger Tail. I wore Punto on one eyelid and Tiger Tail on the other eyelid. The shift, Tiger Tail looks purple, but the shift that it took on my lids was a green shift. Let me see if I can. It was a green shift on my lids. And I'll insert the clip next. But I took a nap when I applied these initially, and I was trying out throughout the day. It wasn't a day that I went out. I took a nap. I say nap because it wasn't, the 1 hour nap turned into a 4-hour sleep. I woke up, my eyeshadows were still in place, and I took a photo to show you guys. I was pleasantly surprised. I used the Hindash color fluid as a base as well, and Pat McGrath artistry wand on top as a sticky base. So Hindash color fluid as a primer, and then the Pat McGrath artistry wand as a sticky base for these two. I did not need it for Tiger's Tail. I just applied it out of habit. I was like, okay, I know I need it for this one, Punto. I'll just apply for this one and just apply and wear the shadows. There was no creasing. There were some flakes from me tossing and turning and sleeping, but impressive. I was very impressed, and I'll insert a photo somewhere so you guys can see. As a consumer, I probably wouldn't have bought it if it wasn't sent to me. Even with the discount, I still would have been like, I don't think I need these colors. Now that I have it, knowing what I know, would I still have purchased it? No, because of the price. When I break down the price, it's digestible. I'm like, oh, $9.30 each, cool. But when I think $140 with the discount, with or without a discount, I'm trying to be a conscious consumer. And when I really think about it, whether it was sent to me or not, I think I still am leaning towards a no. I would not purchase it. One thing I would do though, now that I know what I know, I think I would have preferred the option of being able to purchase the shadows I want. It's a beautiful palette. It's a beautiful release. I'm grateful to Adept for sending me this palette, and I hope this... Hey, wanted to drop in and show you guys how the eye look is holding up. It's been 5 hours since I put on this eye look, and this is the makeup. And you can see, and I don't know, I don't think I mentioned it, but most eyeshadows I wear, doesn't matter what brand, most eyeshadows crease on me within a few hours, maybe 5-6 hours. When I can wear a shadow 5 to 6 hours before it starts creasing, I'm usually satisfied with that, only because with my oily lids I am prone to creasing, and when a shadow creases in an hour or two, I tend not to wear those shadows. I'm not satisfied with my eye look. But with that in mind, I'm not ready to give up eyeshadow, so most of the time when that happens, I just use my finger throughout the day and just zhuzh it up, and it's back to a shimmery state. But this is untouched. What it looks like 5 hours later, I can see a little bit here. I don't think you can, I don't know if it shows up, but I think you can see it more on this side, just a little bit at that fold right here. Some shadows have worn off, but I can use my finger and usually do that, and it shifts the shadows around. Shimmery shadows are more forgiving on my eyelids because I can shift the mica and it reflects and you don't see the creasing as much. But I am satisfied with what this eye look is giving me. If this palette speaks to you and you have the financial means to purchase it, go ahead and purchase it if that's what you want. But if you feel like from this review, nah, I'm okay, it's okay to pass on it, especially if you have a lot of eyeshadows already. But I still stand with what I said earlier. As a consumer, I probably wouldn't purchase this, only because my head is still wrapped around 140. I don't know why I can't pay 140 when I could probably pay that much or more if I were to choose the shadows individually. I don't know. Would I recommend this to you? I would if you don't have much eyeshadows and you want to try some Adept Cosmetics eyeshadows. I would recommend it. If you also don't have a lot of iridescent shifty shadows from, you know, other indie brands or even Adept, yes, you can try this palette and get it. Especially since it's also a magnetic palette, you can customize if you wish. But if you have a lot of eyeshadows, like most of us probably do, I don't think you need this palette. It is a beautiful palette, but it's up to you to decide if it's something you want in your makeup capsule or if it's something you can pass on. 5 hours and I'm enjoying it. If you enjoyed this review, please give this video a thumbs up. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.